He said I was worthless. But what I found next was something no one could have predicted. You've heard the phrase, hit rock bottom, right? Well, that's exactly where I was. I stood in front of the abandoned motel my father left me, the only thing I had left in this world, and I couldn't help but feel like I was invisible. The life I thought I was living, the person I thought I was, it all came crashing down in one moment. I had just been humiliated, and it was my husband, Mark, the man who promised to love me forever, who called me worthless. Can you imagine that? The one person who's supposed to have your back, tearing you apart with just a few words? Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. My name's Jenna. I'm 32, and I've spent most of my adult life believing that if I worked hard enough, sacrificed enough, I could make things right. I've always been the one to hold everything together, the one who made sure everyone was happy. But Mark? He wasn't the man I married. When we met, he was sweet, caring, the perfect partner. Now, he was nothing but a stranger who made me feel small, insignificant. He had started calling me lazy, useless, and worst of all, worthless. But it wasn't just him. My sister, Carla, the golden child in our family, had left me to deal with the mess. She had always been the one who got everything: looks, attention, success. Now she had all the luxuries, living in the fancy family apartments, while I was left with nothing. My marriage was falling apart, and I didn't even have a place to go. So where was I supposed to go? To the family's fancy apartments that Carla had stolen? To Mark's empty promises? No. I ended up in my father's old motel, a place I hadn't visited in years. It wasn't much, but it was mine, or at least I thought it was. Then, one day, a letter arrived. It was from my father's lawyer. Why hadn't I known about this inheritance before? A secret inheritance? My father had been dead for years, and now, out of nowhere, there was something I was supposed to have. The letter was cryptic, but it mentioned a hidden door, something my father had left for me. What could this mean? What was behind it? I couldn't help but wonder, was this inheritance a way for my father to apologize for all the years he spent away from me? Or was it just another reminder of how I had been forgotten? One thing was for sure, though. This hidden door was going to hold the answers I had been searching for. But as I stood in front of it, I had no idea what I was about to find. Would it be the key to a new life? Or would it destroy everything I had left? My heart raced as I reached for the door, and just before I opened it, I heard footsteps behind me. I thought sleeping in my father's old motel was the lowest point, but it turns out it was just the beginning. I hesitated for a moment, my hand hovering over the cold metal of the motel room door. The air around me felt thick, as if it were holding its breath, waiting for me to make a choice. What was on the other side of this door? It was just a door, after all. But there was something about it, something my father had left behind, and I couldn't ignore it. As I pushed the door open, dust swirled in the air, catching the dim light that filtered through the cracks in the room. It was eerie, almost like stepping into a forgotten time. The room hadn't been touched in years, just like the rest of this place. My father had always been a mystery to me, distant and more concerned with his business than with his family. But now, standing in the silence of this old motel, I realized I had never truly understood him. Not really. I had always believed in the fairy tale. Work hard, be kind, and life would reward you. But when it came to Mark, my husband of 10 years, nothing worked. We had built a life together. At least, I thought we had. But over the past year, something shifted. Mark became distant, cold. No longer the man who would cook dinner and tell me I was beautiful. Now, he barely looked at me. The verbal fights became a regular occurrence. "You're lazy," he'd say. "You'll never amount to anything." It hurt more than I'd care to admit. But the worst blow came a few days ago, when he said, "You're worthless." Those words were like a dagger in my chest. After everything we had been through, how could he say that to me? And then there was Carla, my sister. Always the favorite, always the one with the perfect life. She had the looks, the charm, the career. And now, she had everything. Literally. Carla had taken all the family's luxury apartments for herself, leaving me with nothing but this crumbling motel. The distance between us had grown for years, and now it felt like she was rubbing her success in my face. But as much as I hated it, there was a part of me that wanted to believe in the fairy tale. That maybe, just maybe, if I found the right thing, the right way to make it all work, everything would turn around. That's why I had to open this door. It wasn't just about my father's inheritance, it was about finding something, anything, that would prove I was worth something. Inside the room, the air was thick with neglect. Broken furniture, peeling wallpaper, a few faded photographs on the walls. This place looked like it hadn't been touched in decades. But there was something else. An envelope on the floor. I bent down, my hands trembling as I picked it up. It was my father's handwriting. Inside was another letter. This one much more detailed than the one from the lawyer. It spoke of a hidden inheritance, but the real surprise was what it said about Mark. My father had known about his manipulation. He'd known what Mark was really like. I couldn't believe it. How had he known? Had he seen through Mark all these years ago? The letter ended with a cryptic message. "When you find the hidden key, you'll understand everything." What key? What was my father trying to tell me? And then, as I stood there, staring at the letter, I heard a noise. Footsteps approaching. It couldn't be Mark, could it? I quickly shoved the letter back into the envelope and hid it under the bed. My heart raced. Who was coming? I was about to open the door, but I had no idea what I was going to find behind it. The footsteps grew louder. I froze. My mind raced. Who could it be? It wasn't Carla. She wouldn't come here, not after everything. And Mark? I couldn't even imagine him showing up here. I had left him a week ago, after our last brutal fight. But the silence in this place felt almost louder than anything he could have said. I held my breath as the door creaked open, and to my shock, it wasn't Mark. It wasn't Carla either. Standing in the doorway was Lucas, my father's old business partner. He was older now, gray at the temples, but his eyes still carried that sharp, calculating look. Lucas and my father hadn't spoken in years, and I hadn't seen him since my father's funeral. Why was he here? "Jenna," he said, his voice low and cautious. "I didn't expect to find you here." I stood up, trying to steady my nerves. "What are you doing here, Lucas?" His eyes flicked to the envelope I had just hidden under the bed, and for a moment he didn't speak. There was something in the air, something unspoken, like he knew exactly what I had found. Lucas walked into the room, his eyes scanning the motel room like he was looking for something, maybe even me. The tension between us was palpable. "I thought you'd be here sooner," he said. "Your father always had plans for you. I don't know if you knew this, but there were things he never shared with you. Things he thought you weren't ready for." I felt my stomach twist. What did he mean by that? Things my father had kept from me? I had always been under the impression that my father didn't care much about me, that his business was his one true love. But Lucas's words made me question everything. What if my father had been planning something for me all along? What if he had known that this moment, this exact situation, would come to pass? Lucas took a step closer. There's more to your inheritance than just money, Jenna. There's power, something that could change everything for you. I shook my head. What do you mean, power? What's in that letter? I could feel the urgency in my voice. I needed answers. He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he glanced around the room and leaned in closer. I'm here to make sure you're ready. But if you want to understand what your father left for you, you'll need to trust me. This isn't just about money, Jenna. It's bigger than that. My heart pounded. This was it. This was the turning point. I had to decide. Do I trust Lucas, the man who had been a part of my father's life? Or do I walk away and pretend like nothing had changed? Before I could speak, Lucas placed a hand on my shoulder. There's a hidden door in this motel. It's not just a symbol. It's a key to understanding everything. Your father left you the answers you've been looking for, but you have to unlock them. Are you ready to find out what's on the other side? I was stunned. The hidden door from the letter. Was this the same door I had been standing in front of just moments ago? The key to everything? My father had left it for me, but for what purpose? Lucas's face was serious. There's a lot you don't know, and the choices you make now could change the course of your life, but you can't do it alone. I swallowed hard, the weight of his words pressing on my chest. I stood there, torn. Lucas was waiting for me to decide. The letter, the inheritance, the hidden door, everything was coming to a head. And just as I opened my mouth to ask Lucas what exactly I was about to uncover, a voice called out from behind me. A voice I hadn't heard in days. Jenna. It was Mark. What was he doing here? And why did it feel like everything was unraveling in front of me? I had the proof in my hands, but I wasn't prepared for what Mark was going to do next. The moment I heard Mark's voice, everything inside me froze. He shouldn't have been here. I had left him behind, made the decision to finally stand on my own 2 feet after everything he had said. After all the emotional wounds he had inflicted on me. Why was he here now? I turned slowly, my heart hammering in my chest, unsure of what I would find when I faced him. Mark stood at the door, looking like a man who had just walked through fire. His face was pale, his eyes wide with disbelief, as if he couldn't quite process the situation. And in his hands, he held something, a thick folder filled with papers. Jenna, he said again, his voice shaky, but the anger underneath was unmistakable. What are you doing here? His eyes flicked toward Lucas, then to the envelope I had hidden under the bed. You shouldn't be here. This place, it's not safe for you. I couldn't contain my anger. It's not safe for me? You call me worthless, and then you show up here? What do you want, Mark? Mark stepped into the room, his movements tense. I didn't want it to go this far, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. But his words carried more weight than anything he had ever said before. There was guilt in his eyes, but there was something else too. Fear. I took a step back, instinctively moving away from him. What's in that folder? I asked, my voice cold. Mark didn't answer right away. He just held it out to me, a mix of defiance and hesitation in his expression. I didn't want to take it. Didn't want to know what he had hidden, but I knew I had no choice.
I grabbed the folder from his hands, feeling the weight of the paper inside. As I flipped through the pages, my blood ran cold. It was all there. Documents, financial records, business contracts.
But the most shocking part was that it was proof. Proof that Mark had been involved in a massive cover-up with my father's business. He had manipulated the entire inheritance deal, lying about assets and ownership, and worse yet, had used me as a pawn in his scheme. I stared at the papers, struggling to understand what I was seeing. Mark's betrayal went deeper than I had ever imagined. He had known all along about my father's plans. He had known about the inheritance, every detail, and he had made sure I was left out of the loop. He'd been trying to shut me down, to control the narrative even after my father's death. "You never thought I'd find out, did you?" I said, my voice breaking through the silence. I was furious now, the anger building inside me, pushing everything else aside. "You thought I was stupid. You thought I wouldn't see through you." Mark stepped closer, trying to make me understand, but it was too late. His facade was gone.
"Jenna,
No," I interrupted, holding up the papers. "Don't you dare try to talk your way out of this. I know everything now." Lucas, who had been quietly observing this exchange, finally spoke up.
"Jenna, your father wasn't just protecting you from Mark. He was protecting you from the truth. The inheritance is more than money. It's about taking control of the legacy he left behind. Your father wanted you to be the one to lead, not Mark." I could hardly process what Lucas had just said. My father had wanted me to take control of everything. I was more than just a bystander in this game. I turned to Mark, my voice sharp. "You never deserved me, did you?" Just then, Mark reached into his pocket, his hand trembling. I braced myself for whatever was coming next. Was he going to try to make it right? Or was he going to fight for the power he thought he had? In that moment, the world seemed to slow. My father's hidden inheritance, the betrayal, everything, it was all coming together. I knew I had one final decision to make. Mark looked at me with desperation in his eyes. "Jenna, wait. Let me explain everything. Just one more chance." I stood there, holding the papers, my heart pounding. The next few seconds would change everything. I looked at Mark, his pleading eyes boring into me. But the truth was, I didn't need his explanations anymore. Everything was already clear. I knew what had been happening behind the scenes, and I understood the full weight of my father's intentions. My father had planned for this moment. He had set up a legacy, a secret inheritance, not just in money, but in control, in power. And Mark? Mark had tried to manipulate it all, to hide the truth from me. But now, everything was out in the open. My fingers clenched around the papers. "I'm done, Mark," I said. The anger that had once burned inside me was replaced by something else now. Relief. I had been holding on to the hope that there was something worth saving, but now I saw that it wasn't about saving a broken marriage. It was about saving myself. The inheritance my father left me wasn't just about assets or wealth. It was about reclaiming my life, about stepping into a role I never thought I could. He had wanted me to be the one in control all along, not Mark, not anyone else. And now, I had the power to make that choice. I would take what was mine. I would take what I was always meant to have. A wave of emotion hit me all at once. The shock of everything I had learned, the anger at Mark's betrayal, and the overwhelming sense of relief that came with the realization that I wasn't worthless. I never was. My chest tightened, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I felt the tears threaten to fall.
But this time, they weren't tears of pain or defeat. They were tears of freedom. I wasn't the woman Mark tried to make me believe I was. I wasn't the weak, helpless person he had seen me as. I was stronger than I had ever known. I turned away from him and towards the door.
Holding the evidence of his lies in my hand. I don't need your second chance, I told him firmly. I'm done. Mark stood frozen as I walked past him. His entire world was crumbling, and I couldn't bring myself to care anymore. He had used me for years, controlled me with his words, and tried to steal my future. But now, everything had shifted. I walked out of that room and into a new chapter of my life. My father's inheritance had changed everything, not just financially, but emotionally and mentally. I didn't just inherit a business or money. I inherited my own strength, my own power. In the following weeks, Mark tried to reach out, but I refused to take his calls. I couldn't keep pretending that he deserved a place in my life. And Carla? She called too, apologizing for everything. But this time, I wasn't going to let her guilt trip me into forgiving her so easily. I would move forward on my terms. I stood outside the motel, looking out at the horizon. The past few weeks had been a whirlwind, but now that the dust had settled, I could see clearly. I wasn't that scared, lost woman anymore. I was in control of my own destiny. The inheritance wasn't just money, it was a new life, a fresh start. I didn't need anyone to define me. I was finally ready to live for myself. As I walked away from the motel, the weight of everything I had been through lifted off my shoulders. I was free. And for the first time in a long time, I was excited to see what came next.